We start our journey in the year 1197. A young girl named Estelle waits in her home when her father, Cassius, returns. It's only when Cassius reveals that he brought back an injured boy with black hair and amber eyes. The boy's name is Joshua, and Cassius explains that he will be Estelle's new adopted brother. We jump 5 years into the future. Estelle and Joshua meet up with Scheherazade at the Bracer Guild to undergo the Junior Bracer exam. Estelle and Joshua venture into the sewers, defeat monsters and obtain their client's item and return to the surface. Scheherazade informs them that they've passed the exam and are now junior bracers. Soon after, the guild receptionist, Aina, is panicked after 2 kids have been spotted around Esmeralda's tower, which is known to have monsters lurking. Estelle and Joshua make their way to the tower and manage to catch up to the children before they can get hurt. However, from Estelle's lack of experience, she almost gets ambushed by a monster from behind. Luckily, she is saved by Cassius, whom Aina managed to contact after talking with Estelle. They all make their way home when Cassius explains over dinner that he will leave Verone for a couple of weeks on bracer duties, leaving behind some quests for Estelle, Joshua and Scheherazade. One of the jobs requires Estelle and Joshua to retrieve a septium crystal from Mayor Claus. While handing the crystal over, they notice a girl named Josette in a Janus Royal Academy outfit. Afterwards, they assist reporter Niall and photographer Dorothy to the top of Esmeralda's tower. When they reach the top, they meet someone already there. The man is Professor Alba, who is an archaeologist who has taken an interest in the tower. However, after returning to the guild, the mayor explains how he's been robbed and that the septium crystal has been stolen. Estelle, Joshua and Scheherazade begin the investigation and deduce Josette must be the culprit. They make their way to Mistwald Forest and witness Josette with the crystal. They then begin battle before Josette's brother Kyle aids in Josette's escape. After returning the crystal to the mayor, Estelle and Joshua get a recommendation from the Roland Branch of the Bracer Guild. Suddenly, the guild receives a message from the Bose branch informing that the airship Lind has gone missing, the same airship Cassius was on. Estelle, Joshua and Scheherazade decide to make their way to the Bose region to investigate. Before leaving, Estelle opens up to Joshua about how she lost her mother during the 100 Days War a decade prior. Upon arriving to Bose, they head to the Bracer Guild where receptionist Legrand updates them on the disappearance of the airship. General Morgan is investigating the issue, but refuses to share the details with the general public or even the guild, as the army and the guild have a complicated relationship. Therefore, the three focus on helping Mayor Mabel's request to ask for details on the case from Morgan, as it's affecting the market price. The three make their way to Haken Gate, concealing the fact that they are bracers, where we find out that the airship was hijacked by the Kapoor family, the Sky Bandits that were involved last chapter. Unfortunately, Estelle slips up and makes Morgan aware that they are bracers, which causes him to throw them out. Scheherazade and Morgan begin to bicker before they are interrupted by Olivia, a travelling bard from Erebonia. After a little tune, Morgan makes the group leave so the bracers and Olivia return to Bose and report back to Mabel. Mabel wishes the trio to continue their investigation and obtain a tip from Niall to make their way to Revenue Village. After talking to one of the kids, they explain how on the night of the disappearance he saw 2 shadows flying over the village. They then head to the mines when they find the Sky Bandits and begin to battle Kyle, but he manages to get away using a smoke bomb. Although the Sky Bandits escape, the trio investigate the airship for any hostages but find none. However, as they begin to leave, General Morgan and his army surround the ship and arrest the bracers. While in the cell, they notice Olivia has also been locked up. Luckily, Mabel comes to save them, including Olivia, so the 4 begin to investigate the civilians for any more clues. One citizen mentions how his friend at Valeria Lakeshore noticed some shady figures recently, so the group make head there. They set up base and wait for the bandits to appear, when they overhear Kyle mention how their ship is parked nearby. The group find the airship at Amberol Tower and hop on. The group ends up at the Sky Bandits' hideout at Nabar Valley and begin to rescue the hostages. However, after saving all the hostages, Estelle notices how they haven't come across Cassius anywhere. The hostages then mention that Cassius actually got off the lynch before it took off. Before fighting, Josette and Kyle notice that Dawn is acting more violent than usual. Only after the group defeat the siblings does Dawn's personality go back to normal. The army then arrives and arrests the Sky Bandits, so the group returns to the Bracer Guild where they receive their second recommendation. While at the guild, Estelle receives a letter and a parcel. The letter is from Cassius and explains that he will be away on Bracer's work and won't be back before the Queen's birthday. They then open the parcel where they find a black ornament and a letter attached from a person called Kay, asking them to bring this black ornament to Professor R. Confused by all of this, they decide to continue their bracer duties across Liberl. Olivia and Scheherazade say their goodbyes as they leave via airship. Though on their journey, Scheherazade catches Olivia talking to someone on what looks like an artifact, which she calls him out on as he has no right of owning them as they belong to the Septian Church. Estelle and Joshua arrive at Rouen where they bump into a boy named Clem who pickpockets Estelle's bracer badge. They track the boy down at Mercia Orphanage and retrieve the badge. They are then introduced to Chloe, who helps out at the orphanage in her spare time when she's not busy at Janus Royal Academy. Chloe shows the two around Rouen before they meet Jean, the receptionist of the Bracer Guild. The next day, Jean informs the two that the orphanage had burnt down the night prior, though luckily everyone was able to escape. The two are then tasked with investigating the fire. With the assistance of Chloe, they meet with the matron at Menorah Inn, who explains a man with silver hair saved her and the children. Mayor Dalmore interrupts the discussion with his assistant Gilbert, assuming that ravens were responsible for the fire. Overhearing this, Clem makes his way to the Ravens' hideout, which causes Estelle, Joshua, and now Chloe to assist in defending them before Agate, an ex-Raven member, attacks their leader. The four head back to the guild when Agate takes over the investigation, which allows Estelle and Joshua to help out with the Janus Royal Academy festival. With the school play finished, the school offers Teresa the money that they raised to help rebuild the orphanage. However, while walking back, Teresa was ambushed and the money was stolen. Joshua deduces that sleeping powder was used, so she should be safe. This is when Agate enters the room and joins the party in helping to get the money back. Chloe's falcon, Zeke, helps the group, pointing them towards Varenne Lighthouse, where they find Raven members but seem to be under the influence of some sort of drug. The group make their way to the top where they find Gilbert pulling the strings, who with Delmar had planned to burn the orphanage down for the estate. The Jaegers end up betraying Gilbert by shooting him and making a run for it. Agate chases them while Estelle, Joshua and Chloe head back to Teresa to return the money. The next day, Estelle and Joshua inform Jean what happened, which causes him to get the royal army involved to arrest Dalmor. After catching Dalmor trying to sell the estate to Duke Dunan, this causes Dalmor to release monsters on the group. After defeating them though, Dalmor uses his final trick by using a Cronus Rod, an artifact that has the ability to paralyze a person's mobility. Before getting shot, the black ornament that Estelle carries activates and neutralizes the Cronus Rod, causing the group to chase Dalmor. Upon sailing away, the Arsail, the Royal Guard ship, prevents him from escaping. However, upon being arrested, Dalmor claims to have no recollection of the events that had transpired. Estelle and Joshua make their way to the Bracer Guild, where Jean congratulates them and provides them with their third recommendation. Chloe walks Estelle and Joshua to the Air Letten, wishing them the best of luck, though she makes mention that she might see them in Gransel as she'll be visiting her family during the Queen's birthday. As the two walk towards Zeiss, they bump into a girl with blonde hair. They keep an eye on her before defending her from some monsters. The girl's name is Tita and she actually works for a Zeiss central factory, so she guides them towards the city of Zeiss before returning to work. Estelle and Joshua meet Kilika, the guild receptionist who writes the letter of introduction to the head of Zeiss Central Factory. The two meet up with Murdoch to show him the ornament and letter. He recognises that Professor R is Professor Russell and sends them to meet him. Tita is actually the granddaughter of Professor Russell, so she takes them to her home. However, when she tries to introduce them to her grandfather, Russell is too absorbed in his work to notice them. Eventually, Professor Russell begins to examine the ornament until it activates like last time when Delmore almost shot the Bracers, but this time all ornament technology within the city has been deactivated. The analysis is abandoned, which causes the orbments to reactivate, with Professor Russell referring to the effect as the orbital shutdown phenomenon. While trying to saw open the orbment, Murdoch interrupts the group, informing them that the pump at Elmo Village has broken down and requires immediate repairs. Tita persists that she knows how to fix the pump, so Estelle and Joshua assist in escorting her to the village. While there, Tita fixes the pipe and innkeeper Mao offers the group a stay overnight for free. They take up her offer and return to Zeiss the next morning. However, upon returning, they notice that Zeiss Central Factory is filled with smoke and it turns out that Professor Russell is missing. Agate then appears to help in the search, where they see Professor Russell being kidnapped by familiar-looking Jaegers from the previous chapter. After the Jaegers disappear without trace, they obtain a lead from Professor Alba mentioning how he saw suspicious figures at Cornelia Tower. Tita wishes to come along, but Agate dismisses her as she's only 12 years old and would most likely get in the way. The three make their way to the top of the tower and fight against the Jaegers, but while trying to save Professor Russell, Tita appears and Agate leaps in front of her, defending her from an incoming bullet. The Jaegers get away with Professor Russell, and Agate slaps Tita, blaming her for the failure to save her grandfather. On the way back to Zeiss, the group bump into a fellow Bracer Zin before Agate begins to pass out. They rush Agate back to Zeiss and find out that the bullet that he was shot with was laced with poison. Although not a cure, if the group can obtain Zemurian moss, Agate should live. Zin agrees to help the group and they succeed in obtaining it. The next day, Killick informs the group that the army has abandoned their investigation on the kidnapping of Professor Russell. Suspicious of this, Dorothy then shows the group a photo of an airship that resembled the aircraft the Jaegers used to kidnap Professor Russell on top of Cornelia Tower. Suspiciously enough, the ship was near Leeson Fortress. With this, Estelle, Joshua, Agate and Tita infiltrate the fortress and catch Colonel Richard questioning Professor Russell how the Black Ornament works. After saving Professor Russell, the group is successful in escaping with the assistance of Major Sid. While outside, the group split up where Professor Russell requests Estelle and Joshua to head to Gransel and inform the Queen what Colonel Richard is up to. The two make their way to Gransel until Estelle and Joshua meet up with Ellen, the receptionist at the Bracer Guild. While investigating, the two find out that the Queen is currently ill and thus Duke Dunan and Colonel Richard have split responsibility. While watching a fighting tournament, they find out that the prize is an invitation to the royal dinner party. Estelle and Joshua join Zin's team as this would be the only opportunity for them to get into the castle and to meet with Her Highness. Zin agrees with the two to join them, but he recommends that they find a fourth member, when with perfect timing Olivia offers to help them. In between rounds, Estelle and Joshua meet with Niall and inform him of Conall Richard's doings in the previous chapter. Niall suspects that he's been pulling the strings from behind the scenes since the beginning and decides to investigate the matter later. After some more battles, Niall shares all the information regarding Conall Richard, Captain Amalthea, and 2nd Lieutenant Lawrence. Later that night, Estelle and Joshua are given a letter to meet with someone at the cathedral. This turns out to be 1st Lieutenant Swartz, who we met at the end of chapter 2. She gives a letter to the two and requests to give said letter to head maid Hilda, who can assist with organising a meeting with the Queen. The final round of the tournament begins, and Estelle's group is victorious. Though before the group can make their way to the castle, Olivia is dragged away by Major Vander as to prevent an international scandal, as Erebonia and Liberal's relationship is already strained as it is. While at the castle, Estelle and Joshua manage to find Hilda and give her the letter. They meet in private and then begin to plan how they will meet with the Queen. Ultimately, Hilda dresses the two up in maid outfits to Joshua's dismay to meet with the Queen. Finally, in Her Highness's presence, Estelle and Joshua are able to share everything that they've learnt about Conall Richard. Queen Alicia informs the two about strange ornament regions deep below the castle, which was thought to be connected to an artifact. Following on, she shares the story of how Cassius was a massive help during the 100 Days' War with Erebonia. Ultimately, his assistance most likely led them to victory. Unfortunately, the death of his wife was the reason why he left the military. All of this information Estelle was not even aware of. Queen Alicia ends the meeting by making a request to save her granddaughter, who's been held hostage at the Herb Royal Villa. She is aware that Conall Richard and Duke Dunan are behind this, as they are ignoring her requests and are planning a coup d'etat. The next day, Estelle, Joshua and Zin begin recruiting bracers in the area, and with the assistance of Schwartz, plan on how they will save the hostages. After raiding the villa, Estelle comes face to face with Princess Claudia, who turns out to actually be Chloe, who we met in chapter 2. As a last resort, the intelligence division hold a hostage at gunpoint, but luckily, Scheherazade and Olivia are able to get the upper hand and prevent the hostage from getting hurt. The group continues to liberate the castle from the intelligence division to try and save the Queen, but it's 2nd Lieutenant Lawrence who stands in their way. After defeating Estelle, Chloe and Scheherazade, Lawrence takes off his mask and declines any pity given to him by the Queen, as she is aware of the name Hamel. After that, he states that Conall Richard is already beneath the castle before leaping off the castle. With that, everyone regroups and head towards the depths of the castle to meet with Conall Richard and stop his plan. After catching up with him, Richard explains that compared to Erebonia and Calvard, Liberal is a small country with limited military power. Therefore, by obtaining the power of one of the 7 Septarian, Liberal would wield the power to prevent a war like the 100 Days' War from happening ever again. However, Joshua questions Richard as there's no way he should possess the knowledge that he has, but he, just like Don Capua and Mayor Delmore, is unsure how he obtained this information. After fighting Richard, the Black Ornament activates and an Archaism approaches them with the goal to kill them. Even with the group and Richard attacking the Archaism, it won't stay down. It's only until Cassius appears that the day is saved. After everything settles down, Cassius knocks some sense into Richard for his hunger for power and the idolization of himself. He then explains that he himself was not the sole reason for Liberal's survival, but instead it was the cooperation of everyone within the military. A week later, the Queen's celebration is in full swing, with Estelle and Joshua receiving their final recommendation from Elnan, promoting them to senior racers. While the two rest, Professor Alba approaches Joshua, who is on his own, where he reveals that he was actually the mastermind behind everything. Professor Alba was just an alias. His real name is George Weissman, the third Anguis of Ouroboros. He was the one who manipulated people's memories, and the way he was able to do it was by having Joshua as his puppet. Joshua is actually Enforcer 13 and was under the control of Weissman, who spied on Cassius' every move. That night, Joshua opens up to Estelle about his past. He shares that an incident had left him without a heart. It wasn't until a man was able to fix him that the man shaped Joshua into becoming an assassin who would kill with no remorse. That was until one day he was assigned to assassinate Cassius Bright, but he was no match for him. Upon being defeated, Cassius would save him by bringing him to their home and adopting him into the Bright family. It's only until Joshua hands over his harmonica and plans to leave that Estelle confesses her love to him. He goes in to kiss Estelle, but laces it with a sedative. This causes Estelle to fight to stay awake before Joshua bids his goodbye.